This episode of the ABIG podcast is brought to you by Tissue Repair. Hello and welcome to the ABIG podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Here, we're strengthening and unifying the industry through representation, innovation, and education. This is a platform created and dedicated to the aesthetic and beauty industry, valuing unity and advancement. We serve to represent, support, and inspire you by connecting you with industry experts, expanding your knowledge through educational pieces, and bringing you the latest industry news. This is the ABIG podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Miller, and today's guests are Darryl Reed and Charlotte Melly from Tissue Repair. Darryl brings a wealth of experience from roles across research, government, and the private sector, including multinational corporations and startups. After completing a melanoma research fellowship in Switzerland, he returned to Australia to work with the Therapeutic Goods Administration before taking on senior positions with Roche and Bayer. Now, as Chief Operating Officer at Tissue Repair, Darryl plays a pivotal role in the company's growth and ASX listing. Charlotte's journey in the cosmetic industry began over a decade ago. Starting as a dermal therapist, she advanced her education, earning a Bachelor of Nursing and specialising in cosmetic injectables. For the past 7 years, Charlotte has honed her expertise, working alongside some of the most respected professionals in aesthetics. Together, Darryl and Charlotte bring a unique blend of pharmaceutical insight and clinical expertise to today's discussion. Here to talk about skin healing and aftercare for aesthetic clinics from Tissue Repair, today we welcome Darryl Reed and Charlotte Melly. Welcome to the podcast, Darryl and Charlotte. How are you today?
Good, Steph. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Steph.
Oh, I'm very excited because it is a topic today that we don't usually talk about. We're always talking about procedures and products and, what's the latest, greatest thing for actual treatment efficacy. But today we're talking about something very special and really underutilized, and that is healing and the amazing work that you can do post-care just with the most advanced and enhanced healing processes. But before we start, tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves and how you came to be in the beauty and aesthetic industry.
Sure, Steph. Look, I can kick off. My background is a molecular biologist. I trained in Canberra and then I moved to Switzerland and worked on melanoma for 3 years, doing some research on gene therapy there. So that was really my first foray into sort of skin, I guess, and dermatology. Moved back to Australia, worked in big pharma, so Roche and Bayer primarily for almost 20 years. And one of my products there was Advantin, which is a corticosteroid for eczema. So again, more exposure to dermatology there. Really loved working in that area, and that sort of led me to join Tissue Repair about 3 years ago. So I don't have a lot of experience in the beauty industry, but I've got some experience in dermatology. And what I don't have in the beauty industry, I've got a great team that sort of complements me, and they have lots of experience there.
I got into the beauty industry just over 10 years ago now as a dermal therapist. And soon after that, I became a registered nurse purely to be able to administer cosmetic injectables. And I met the founder of Tissue Repair, Tony Chirara, about a year ago and trialed TR Pro Plus, which we'll be speaking about today, and loved the product so much that I wanted to jump on board. So lots of experience in the cosmetic space and also have worked with doctors as well.
I love today that we've got two different perspectives on this incredible topic, which we were chatting yesterday, and I was just fascinated about the product, its efficacy and simplicity as well. Share this story with everyone behind Tissue Repair because it is a really good story. What was the inspiration for starting this, wonderful Australian company focused on aftercare and skin healing products in particular?
Yeah, look, thanks, Steph. It is a really cool story, I think. It kicked off probably, I reckon, the early 2000s in Sydney, and there was a vet who was Graham Kelly, Dr. Graham Kelly. He was working at Sydney Uni. He had interest in a whole lot of things, but at that time there was emerging research about the possibility of beta glucans that come from yeast having a role in immunomodulation. And Graham was interested in this. He tapped away a little bit. He worked out how to extract the beta glucans. And it's interesting because when you look at some of the early notes of that time, because he was a vet, he tried the product on horses down at Randwick Racecourse. So we've got these old photos with horses with leg wounds and some notes, and they were probably the first case studies of the product. So Graham sort of worked on that for a number of years, and then I think that company moved on. They needed to sell those assets. And our founder of Tissue Repair, Tony Churara, he was given the task of selling that technology. He liked what he saw because he had a bit of exposure to the science. Seen some of the preclinical and the safety studies and some of the early clinical trials. And he thought there was something there. So he was able to, I guess, procure some funding to run another 2 phase 2 clinical trials and really at that stage get another positive signal and really understand, look, there was 2 separate work streams. There was a chronic wound work stream on venous leg ulcers, and there was an acute one on laser skin resurfacing. The positive signals were on both of those work streams. So it was at that point then that I came on board. That was about 3.5 years ago. We listed the company on the ASX, and the funding that was going there was really to drive the phase 3 clinical trials that were needed to support the chronic wound indication. And that's all being done under an FDA file. That's ongoing. We move into those phase 3 studies very soon. But I think what's exciting is what we're here to talk about today, which is the acute wound side, which covers post aesthetic procedures as well as medical procedures. So look, it's a great story. It's an Australian owned and run company. We are really, really small, and we're working with some really exciting technology.
Wow, that is a story indeed. And I love the roots of where this came from. The fact that it is an Australian company, an Australian doctor came up with it, but just the story that leads up to it. And yesterday we were talking about the healing component. And your company is so focused on healing, and really you said yesterday something that was so incredible, letting the body or helping the body to promote its own healing cascade and its own healing properties in the right way, in the right sequence. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. But from your perspective, what do you think sets apart professional grade healing products from traditional skincare solutions, but especially in our aesthetic kind of space for aftercare?
Look, for me, Steph, I guess in my mind, with my background in science, I think professional grade healing products need to tick boxes around being evidence-based and being manufactured to a high standard. So products should have a sufficient level of evidence behind them, so as the therapists and clinicians have a high degree of confidence around using them and what they're going to achieve. They know how to use them, when to use them, and what outcomes to expect. But this ties in closely to how they're manufactured as well. Are they produced to acceptable standards that give consistency in quality, safety, and efficacy, or are they produced in someone's backyard shed? I know with TR Pro Plus, we make claims around skin healing, skin repair, and skin rejuvenation. They're medical claims, so they're required to be approved by the TGA. And that's important as well, because you know that when you need to go through that regulatory route, you're also obliged to be following conditions of manufacture that comply with GMP. So that provides an extra level of confidence around the quality associated with these types of products.
And Charlotte, from your perspective, what do you think? I mean, you use products every day in clinic, and I have clinics as well, and we've seen practically the difference that a professional grade skincare product even can make on the skin. From your perspective, what do you think sets it apart?
Yeah, I agree with Darryl in the difference is that science-backed products are guaranteed to deliver results. So Tissue Repair has over a decade of research and development behind its active ingredient glucoprime. So reliability should be the focus behind any offering in clinic.
Sure, because there are so many healing challenges. I mean, in clinical practice, you and I have seen it and seen it all probably in terms of the actual challenges you need to overcome after you perform a treatment. But even beforehand, to get the skin ready for the treatment, how can modern and, scientific aftercare approach or address these effectively, do you think?
So I'd say the primary challenge that we face in clinic today is downtime. And
Yes.
more devices today have downtime, and we are more device orientated in combating aging than ever before. And I find that most people want to get straight back to work. So TR Pro Plus comes into this because we can accelerate the downtime, which means that your clients will heal quicker with TR Pro Plus. And it doesn't compromise results as well. In fact, it improves results post device treatments like ablative laser or RF needling.
And you know what? I can actually say that I agree with that because I use it myself after treatment. As a matter of fact, I had a sneaky treatment yesterday after I met with you guys, and I used it yesterday, and I'm happy to say I love it. It is incredible. You do see the results, and this is what builds confidence, isn't it? Because the last thing we want is to send our patients home red and inflamed. And Charlotte, the worry that we have when I had one of my therapists actually checking on me today because it was so red inflamed straight after treatment. So you worry about that healing cascade afterwards. Like, is it going to be too inflamed?
Look, Steph, one of the things that we know is that healing is a really complicated process. There's so many different factors that need to get switched on and off at the right time and in the right concentrations. And we know a lot about healing, but we don't know everything. And sometimes I get a little bit worried that when I see a bit of research that's come out and it highlights a particular cellular factor as being important in that healing process, and then I see products which contain just that. And the premise there is, look, if it's positive for healing, we should be able to have this in a product and apply it, and we're going to, provide a benefit there. What I worry about is whether that has an effect on the downstream processes that are happening. If you add something at a higher concentration or at the inappropriate time, does that have a deleterious effect on what's going to happen downstream from that? And I don't think we always know that. But what I love about TR Pro Plus is that we're not making any of those assumptions. We're really just providing a stimulus which then starts off that healing and initially kicking off with an inflammatory process, progressing through the healing stage, and really allows the body to do what it does best, which is to heal that skin.
And specifically, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the science, because when you start speaking science, I think my ears perk up, and I'm sure all of our listeners are really fascinated with, how does this work? Tell us about TR Pro Plus and how it actually differs from other aftercare and healing products on the market. What's the mechanism there that's happening when you put this incredible product on?
Sure. Yeah, look, it's really, it's interesting on the journey that we've taken, because in many ways we put the cart before the horse. We had these clinical trial studies that we knew were positive, and we've had case studies that have shown, a really positive benefit, but we haven't always understood at a detailed level how that happens. And certainly there's information in the literature that gives us an idea. We've had a lot of preclinical and safety studies done mostly to support the chronic wound product, but those formulations are the same, so it's relevant for both products. But over the last 12 months, we've been working with one of the labs at the University of South Australia, and they've been doing some in vitro work and some animal studies for us, and they have really highlighted in more detail just how the product works. So I can take you through that now. Essentially, what we're using is a beta-glucan that comes from baker's yeast. So the normal yeast that is used to brew beer, bake bread. We lyse the cells of the yeast and we pull out everything other than the beta-glucan. So all the fats, all the proteins come out, and we end up with a really pure beta-glucan, which is essentially a really complex sugar. When it breaks down into glucose. It's metabolized as normal sugar. But before that, it's a really large molecule, which when it folds on itself three-dimensionally is quite complex. Imagine a string of pearls. When you lay them out, they're very simple, but when you fold them into a little ball in your hand, they become quite complex. So that goes into a hydrogel. That's the way that we apply the product. And when you apply that to your skin topically, that beta-glucan moves through to the dermis. And it's at that point there that it's recognized by macrophages. Remember, it's coming from yeast, so these macrophages have evolved to recognize yeast because, of course, they need to protect us from yeast infections. So they have receptors that are on their cell surface that engage directly with that beta-glucan. And when that happens, the macrophage becomes excited, it becomes activated, and it starts to upregulate growth factors and cytokines. And when all this happens around skin that has been damaged, either through, say, a surgical procedure or through an aesthetic procedure, all of that activity is going to contribute to healing the skin faster and with better quality. So those macrophages, we call them M1 macrophages because their role is really to create an inflammatory environment. Because remember, the skin is thinking, my God, there could be a yeast infection here. Of course, there's no yeast. It's just the sugar that is part of the yeast. But they want to remove any pathogens. They want to remove any dead cells. They want to cut away any damaged tissue. So that inflammatory process is really important. But what's important is it's not going on for too long and it's not too severe, because what needs to happen then is that transitions into the next stage of healing, which is the proliferative stage. And what happens then is those M1 macrophages change into what we would call M2 macrophages, and their role is all about guiding the healing of that wound. So they reduce the inflammation, they reduce free radical activity, protease activity. They start to produce more collagen and they lay down that tissue, and that starts to build the tensile strength of the wound. So those M1 and M2 macrophages, they're really important. They're like the managers of that wound healing process. And what we've shown with this lab in Uni of South Australia is that the beta-glucan, which we call glucoprime, in our product is able to stimulate more of those M2 macrophages. So what that means is the body moves through the inflammatory phase quite quickly in a controlled way, and then it moves into the proliferative stage where you start to lay down new tissues. And so having that level of detail behind it now gives us a really clear indication as to why we're seeing such good results in the aftercare, examples that we're using the product with.
Wow, if you can ever be enamored with scientific talk, like right now, I fell in love with that science.
Yeah, look, it's a great story, and it's really nice to have that level of detail around it, because not a lot of aftercare products have that. And really, we've been fortunate because we had to invest a lot in understanding the way it works because of what we're working with in chronic wounds and the FDA. You wouldn't really do that level of work if you were just working in the aesthetic space, because it's expensive and it would be hard to justify that. And you don't always need that level of information, but we've been fortunate to have that. So when I talk to clinics and doctors and share that, I can see, they get really excited at understanding, because they know how the skin reacts. They know about inflammation. They know about the role of that healing process, and to understand how our product fits into that is exciting.
Tissue Repair Ltd is an Australian biotechnology company paving the way in advanced skin healing agents. Their breakthrough, Glucoprime, harnesses the power of beta-glucan, shown to have immunomodulatory properties to promote healing and skin repair. TR Pro Plus, perfect for post-procedure care in medical and aesthetic procedures, is trusted by surgeons, GPs, dermatologists, and dermal therapists nationwide. Tissue Repair's TR987 for the treatment of chronic wounds is set to enter Phase 3 trials in October 2024. Discover a new era of skin recovery. To learn more, visit www.tissuerepair.com.au. Between yesterday and today, we have said the word healing, I don't know, maybe 100 times. It comes across so strongly as an ethos of your company that you want to promote healing and well-being in a person, and not just look at them in a compartmentalized way of let's treat them and then send them off and then not worry about the whole holistic process of what's happening on, to their skin globally. The fact that, we've talked about healing, and that is so forefront in your mind, and that you're really pushing this philosophy out there, is going to really elevate the results that we can get for our clients. And when you were talking about the macrophage activity, my brain, I know, Charlotte, you straight away would probably have gone there, but pigmentation, we always say, how do you stimulate macrophage activity? Because the last thing you want as the long-term result from a treatment is pigmentation, because that's a big one. How do those macrophages start, obviously with the healing process and the healing cascade, but do they play a beneficial role in reducing the likelihood of that post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation that we're so scared about after treatment?
So, pigmentation is obviously more likely in the darker Fitzpatricks. And with the devices that we see today, there are a lot of heat-based devices, and that does increase the likelihood of hyperpigmentation. If we integrate TR Pro Plus immediately into the treatment post-procedure, then TR Pro Plus mitigates the likelihood of pigmentation by managing the inflammatory process.
And that's exciting. It's so exciting, because I know, as I said yesterday, I had a treatment, a laser-based treatment, and I don't even have a dark Fitzpat, and I pigment quite easily. So knowing that I can do something to mitigate, rather than, always having to reach for those tyrosinase inhibitors, which, they help, but they don't interfere with the cause of pigmentation. Because, what goes red can go brown. We all know that, right? So I'm always terrified after a laser treatment that is going to happen. How do you suggest that patients actually practically integrate, advanced aftercare products into their post routines? What should they expect in terms of results?
Well, TR Pro Plus is very cooling on the skin, so it reduces the heat almost immediately. So it's really best that your clients who are performing in-home treatments and your clinicians that are treating patients get TR Pro Plus applied to the skin as soon as the treatment is finished. The cooling sensation is lovely for the clients, but also obviously that reduces the redness in the skin, and it's very soothing and calming on the skin as well. If they were to apply it in clinic, you would just glide a 1 millimeter thick layer over the skin, and then you would have your client take tubes home of TR Pro Plus and apply a minimum of once a day for 5 days. The same would go for your clients that are performing in-home treatments.
And are there any specific treatment types that would benefit most from this particular type of technology?
Anywhere where there is wounded skin, and I would say with what we do in clinic now, that pretty much is the majority of offerings available. So skin needling, RF needling, resurfacing laser, non-ablative lasers as well, where there's just heat in the skin, like IPL or broadband light. And then also post-chemical peels in the healing stage, injectables as well. Anywhere where there's a micro wound, heat, resurfaced.
You know what I've also noticed, and I know this is an off-label thing and it's just a little bit of a side discussion, but when we're using it on patients that have pre-existing rosacea or pre-existing eczema, or their skin is like, I've used it when I've had perioral dermatitis. Now, I'm not making any claims, but oh my goodness, the amount of people that come back and say, look, my redness is dissipated, my perioral dermatitis looks better, what's going on? What's the result here? Have you noticed any effects on those types of conditions?
Charlotte nailed it. I think any situation where the skin is damaged and needs to heal, there's going to be a benefit there. We get a lot of questions on scars. Does it have an impact on scars? It's a great question. We don't have case studies on that, because probably the treatment for scarring, is probably 2 to 3 months minimum. So there's a bit of work getting those together. But what we know is that the barrier creates a moist healing environment in the same way as what a silicone gel would do. So you've got that, sort of passive healing, if you like. But then underneath that, you've got the macrophage activity. And we know that some of the growth factors that are stimulated by those macrophages are associated with normal scar formation. So what's that telling me is you've got this active component of healing that's going to be favourable to scarring. We suspect that the collagen gets laid down a little bit quicker. The transition from collagen type 1 to 3 happens a bit earlier. And what that means is that you're more likely to be able to have controlled scar formation. So that's really important. You talked about dermatitis, and certainly we've had. That's probably one of or maybe the only, along with rosacea, where I'm a little bit more conservative in talking to people, because I know that in those instances, it's very individual. People can have triggers for all sorts of different things, and not everyone responds the same way. So, we've certainly seen some great results on people who have used it on eczema and dermatitis. But what I advise there is, look, apply a little bit of the cream to a small spot, the hydrogel, sorry, to a small spot for probably once a day for 2 days. Just make sure it's okay. And if you're starting to see an improvement, certainly if you're not making it any worse, then you can apply it a little bit more liberally, and hopefully get a good result from that.
I love the fact that it's such an unique product because it's simplicity. So it's one product and it's multifunctional in the true sense of the word, because it really is going to the core of the common causative factor of all of the other skin concerns that can come as a result of a wound being produced. But can we, or how can clinics really tailor the product to individual needs? You were talking about customization and testing the product and just to see its limitations.
I think it's really important to be able to tailor it to specific treatments. There are things like laser and needling that are really the sweet spot. The channels that are created in the skin allow easy access of that beta-glucan to the dermis, and then building on the macrophage stimulation after that. Sometimes I feel that the choice of aftercare is a bit of an afterthought. Like, I think the focus is really on the pre-work and the treatment. And what I'd encourage people, the therapists and clinicians, to think about is how something like TR Pro Plus can elevate the work that they're doing through the procedures. It's going to improve the patient experience, certainly. When it's applied immediately, the patients will talk about the cooling and soothing impact. That really makes the procedure a lot more comfortable for them. And what that means in practice is they're more likely to come back for, repeat procedures, which is great. But then if you've got a benefit in the overall skin quality, well, wow, it's a win-win for both the patient and the therapist. So I think tailor it to what you're using. We're really new in the market, so we're really open to exploring feedback that people might give on different indications. We're only learning as we go. We're conservative in sort of what we tell people, as I said before. But if someone has something else that they'd like to try it on, or they've got some particular condition where they have tried it and see that it works, I'd love to be able to share that, because sharing that body of knowledge gives us a bit more understanding of the product, and we can be a bit more prepared and responsible in how we can sort of communicate that with the clinics and things. So, we're really open to hearing, even if it doesn't work. That's important for us to know as well, because there's probably going to be things that this isn't the ideal product for.
No, I love what you're saying. Everything that you're talking about is innovation, and this is what we live and breathe in the aesthetic industry. We love the next best thing, and we love, to explore how we can further enhance our treatments. But I do think there's just not enough consideration to the healing process and the wound healing process. We don't think about it. When you said it was an aftercare, was an afterthought, that is a very cool way of putting it. I actually think that if we look at it holistically when we're prescribing, treatments and skincare, to include the healing pre and post is something that is a real game changer. And we've seen some incredible results in clinic, just giving that patient a holistic expectation of what their responsibility in this as well, because a lot of the times they go home and they just think, oh, there's nothing much else to do.
Job done. Yeah.
Yeah, job done. We'll put a bit of aloe vera and off we go.
Yep.
But healing is a longer process. You were talking about the inflammatory stage and the proliferation stage, and give us a little bit of rundown. I love the science. I love your science talk, but if you can give us a little bit of a rundown, how long is that healing process really? Is it the 2 weeks or is it the full 28 days?
Look, I think it depends on I guess the extent of damage to the skin, but the consensus seems to be that if you've got really damaged skin and that scar needs to form, then that's like up to 2 years that takes. Of course, post aesthetic treatments, it's not that level of damage, but I think that the inflammatory stage might go for 1 to 2 days, and then the proliferative stage is probably a couple of weeks after that. But I think that's highly variable on individuals as well. Genetics, lifestyle factors, they're all going to come into play there. But I think just because on the surface you might be seeing, some level of healing there and think that's complete, there's often a lot going on underneath. And part of that would be a transition from type 3 collagen, which is laid down first, to type 1, which is what you ultimately want to end up with. It's more ordered, and that's going to give you, the appearance that you want moving forward. So I think the moral here is just don't be fooled by what you're seeing at the top. There's still going to be a lot of work going on underneath the epidermis.
Can we, with this technology, bring patients in sooner to have their follow-up treatment? I mean, I had a treatment yesterday, right? So I'm wanting another one in 2 weeks. Is that too quick if I'm using TR Pro Plus, or should I wait the full 4 weeks? Would they recommend?
We don't have exact data, obviously, per treatment of how the skin has healed with TR Pro and compared to how without TR Pro Plus. So I think I can safely feel myself personally and with my clients, taking a week off that scheduled 4 weeks is absolutely fine. You can tell after using TR Pro Plus that the skin has healed greatly in a very short period of time, even just with a regular needling. So I would always say, go by the advice of your clinician and check your client's skin, see how it's performing. If there's any signs of an impaired barrier, you would never move forward until healed. Yeah, I would say just go by your client's skin. Every individual is always different, and the treatment downtime is completely different as well. So just judge one client at a time.
I love your approach. You're innovative, but you're extremely clinically focused, and you're focused on the data. You're actually going to phase 3 clinical trials for chronic wounds. Can you please share your perspective on the role that clinical trials play in the evolution of aftercare product, and also the potential for driving future advancements in the skin healing and aftercare innovations?
Yeah, look, thanks, Steph. The phase 3 program is, as you say, it's on chronic wounds. So they're, in this case, venous leg ulcers. They are on the lower leg of older people, predominantly. For our trial, we're looking at wounds that are from 2 to 12 centimeters in terms of surface area. So these are big wounds. They're really debilitating. They're very, very difficult to treat. And why that is because they're in the constant stage of inflammation. So all of the macrophages are M1 macrophages. They've got all these proteases happening. There's free radicals there. They're munching up dead tissues and dead cells. It can't transition to the proliferative phase because there's just not enough M2 macrophages to support that. So we believe when we apply our gel to those types of wounds, we're changing that, I guess, just the environment. We're providing a stimulus to M2 macrophages, which means that more tissues can start to be laid down as that inflammation starts to recede. So that's the whole really exciting path we're taking, because there hasn't been any product approved for chronic wounds that's a topical product for a long, long time. So we think we've got a real opportunity to improve the standard of care for those patients. But in terms of the role of clinical trials, look, I think it comes back to what I said earlier, evidence-based. We all want to work with products that are evidence-based, and clinical trials are certainly the gold standard for that. But realistically, they're expensive, and it's not practical for most of the products within the space that we're working. But that's okay, because there's other ways to be able to say, look, I'm working with an evidence-based product, and that might be through literature that's already been published. It could be through case studies, and it could be through opinions of industry leaders and healthcare professionals. So all of those things contribute to the body of evidence. Testimonials from patients are a lot less reliable, but they still make a contribution. So I guess my guidance is, look, clinical trials will play a role, but I really encourage people to be informed about what the level of evidence is behind the products that they want to use. So as when they're coming to decide on a particular clinic to have a treatment, or on their own when they're wanting to select products as aftercare treatments or any type of skin product, they're informed so they can really understand, look, yes, the product I'm picking or the procedure I'm going through does have a strong evidence base, and I can be confident of the outcome that I'm going to get through using that.
I love what you've just said, because it really is also about raising standards in our industry, and that's what ABIC is about, and that's what obviously your company is about, raising the bar in terms of what is reliable and what is scientific based.
Absolutely.
And I just also want to say thank you so much for being a part of the Aesthetic and Beauty Industry Council. You're an incredible member, and your membership supports the industry, and it supports the benchmark standards that we're trying to implement in the industry as well. It also subsidizes all of our clinic members getting that wonderful HR support and that support from a peak body. And of course, the work we do with government. You're such a new company, and you decided to take on this particular membership, which obviously is an expense to a new company as well. So we just want to say thank you so much for supporting the industry. What you guys are doing is incredible. We fully respect and thank you so much for your contribution as well.
Dev, thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to share and just inform people a little bit more about our product. So thanks again.
Thank you for having us, Steph.
You're very welcome. Come back again soon. Thanks for listening, everyone. You've reached the end of another episode of the ABIC podcast, your online support community for the aesthetic and beauty industry. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay connected.